The goal, I think, is to make yourself not that important. At some level in the business starting out, you are that important, but learning how to let go and not squeeze so tightly and letting your team do what you've hired them to do, work with the skill sets that they have that they're better at than you are, and trust them and get out of the way. They want to do a good job, let them.
Hey, welcome to the Construction Leading Edge podcast. My name's Todd from constructionleadingedge.com, and we're all about helping construction business owners systematize their business. And we're here with my good friend, longtime client, Michael Moore, who has not only systematized his business, he's turned his business around pretty dramatically in the past few years. We're going to talk about the before and after. We'll talk about really dig into the systems that he used. How did he do it? How did he grow his company? How did he turn it around? How did he get it to the point it is at today? What's different? And maybe even get into some things that Michael tried that didn't work. And it's going to be good stuff. So Michael, welcome back to the podcast, man. How's it going today?
It's going great, Todd. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So you've been on a couple of times. If folks want to hear about the type of work you do, we'll link to those past episodes in the show notes on the podcast. But just give us a 1 or 2 minute overview of kind of work you do, the name of your company, where you're located, a little bit about your business to provide some context.
For sure. Well, my name is Michael Moore, as Todd already said. We have our construction business is Waterton Construction Group. We're in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. We call that the DFW Metroplex. So if I refer to DFW during the podcast, you know what I'm talking about, Dallas-Fort Worth. We are a hardscape contractor. We predominantly work on residential land development projects. We also do some commercial land development projects as well. So we're not on the residential home building side with homeowners, but we are on the residential land development side. So we build masonry screen walls, hike and bike trails, entry features, fountains, playgrounds, perimeter fencing for the development and common areas, and basically neighborhood site improvements prior to landscape.
Okay. And what's an average contract amount and duration for you?
Yeah, I think that's changed over the years, and I think it's increasing, which is good for us. I would say a probably average contract is probably $400,000 to $500,000. I would probably say 3 years ago it was probably $200,000 to $300,000, but we're kind of changing a little bit, and we'll get into those numbers. But probably around the $500,000 mark.
Okay. And you have the unique vantage point. You're working with some of the largest regional and even national home builders. There's been a lot of, here we are in recording this in March 2024. Things have been pretty slow. Lots of concern from home builders about interest rates and is a recession coming? Did it happen and we missed it? Was it a no recession, whatever. Lots of talk about the economic indicators, but what are you seeing in your market working with these national builders? Are they slowing down? Are they speeding up? Is it business as usual? What are you seeing?
As far as the national builders go, I think that here in Dallas-Fort Worth, we're pretty strong. I mean, just historically, even if there is a downturn in the economy that affects home building, typically we're about a year or so behind the national average as far as feeling the impact. And sometimes if it only lasts a year, we may not feel the impact at all, just because of the market and a lot of out-of-state buyers moving in, predominantly from the West Coast, and a lot of out-of-state money coming here. It's a very company-friendly state. We don't have any state income tax. We have relatively moderately high property tax, but it's kind of offset with the no state income tax. So kind of derailing a little bit from the question, but I wanted to give some context there. So what I'm seeing from the national side, really, we're not seeing much of a slowdown. We're really not. Our contracts are up. Our contracted backlog is up. Is that all due to the market? Probably not. Some of that has to do with our growth and our implementation of processes and systems that have increased our market share. But I don't really see a slowdown. The only thing I would say, if anything, is the national builders are getting really choosy where they enter the market. So, for example, in Dallas-Fort Worth, if you have a neighborhood that's just a one-off subdivision with, let's just call it 300 lots, a decent sized subdivision, but it's not, it doesn't have a lot of amenities. It doesn't have amenity centers, community pools, playgrounds, trail systems, things like that. You see some of the national builders avoiding those plays and getting into more master plan communities that are done by large developers. They may have 10 national builders building in those communities. You see a lot of migration of that because they want the draw from the amenities. Tree houses. We have a project right now we're doing in Dallas. They have an amenity with a large giant tree house built by I think they're on Discovery Channel, those tree house builders.
Hmm.
So it's pretty cool. And we do all the amenities around that as well.
Cool. So let's jump into the changes you made in your business, and then we'll get to some of the before and after. But let's start with this. What were some of the most impactful changes you've made in your business? In other words, what are the top 2, 3, 4 systems or processes that you implemented in your business that had the most positive effects for you? Let's talk about those.
Oh, for sure. I think a lot of these were definitely implemented when we started working with you, Todd, with your Systematizer construction business program. I don't think at the time it was called that, but all the principles were the same. But so I think you've just really condensed and cut out some of the things that didn't need to be there and really polished it up for a great product for people. And we benefited from all of it, so it was great. But I think in that process, one of the first things that we tackled was the nail to handoff. In construction, any phase, whether it's land development, whether it's residential construction, commercial construction, you have a chain of handoffs, whether it be from the client to your estimating team to your construction team, or pre-construction team. There's this chain of handoffs that happen. And if you don't have clean handoffs, you can have catastrophe and just a lot of things go wrong on the back end. And throughout the process, it creates a lot of frustration for your team, profit bleeds, and a lot of just chaos in your business. And you're rebuilding the system every time you have a new client and a new project. So I think nail the handoff was a huge one, and working with you on that and getting the insight and how to do that properly was big. I would also say the implementation of an accountability chart in lieu of just an organizational chart. Organizational charts are typically top down, kind of the Christmas tree effect, where you have the CEO at the top and it trickles down. And there's a place for that. I'm not saying that doesn't have a role. But as far as operationally, I think an accountability chart works much, much better because you're actually putting people in the proper seats on the bus where they belong, and then making each seat accountable for what they're responsible for and defining what that is. So it gets you really clear on who does what, who's responsible for what, and how to hold people accountable in your team. And if it's done properly, the accountability somewhat happens on its own because everybody knows what it is. So it's not that you have to pound down people all the time and say, well, you're accountable and you didn't do this, and get a lot of finger pointing. I think until you do it, sometimes that could be the mentality that, you're entering this thing of accountability and creating a culture of accountability. And it's going to be this domineering kind of authoritative practice. But if you build it right, I think the system does most of that for you. And then I would also say the revenue maximizer is huge, and just implementing some new ERP accounting software was huge, controlling our costs as well. So that's probably the top 3 or 4 things I would probably say in answer to your question.
Yeah, let's work on a couple of those going backwards. Talk about the ERP accounting software that you use. What prompted you to make the change, and what system did you go with?
Yeah, so we started out with Co-Construct, which is a fantastic program. That and Builder Trend are great for residential remodel and home building. If I were in that market still, I'd started there, and it was great for that. I mean, probably would be still in that software today. But for what we did on land development projects where we self-perform with labor-only trades, we don't self-perform with employees, but labor-only trades on our projects, and then we do some turnkey subcontractor work as well, with bringing in turnkey subs on pieces of our projects. We needed something a little bit more robust on the financial accounting side because what was happening is co-construct and builder trend was good for the communication. It was good for the job log updates, the schedule templates, the action items, the task manager, all that. And we still use that today. So I don't want to say we've cast that aside, but we just use those things for the operational task follow up and reporting of the job conditions. Also messaging, we use it for that as well to keep everything in one place. But as far as the accounting side, we switched over to an ERP software called Jonas Premier Construction, and it's quite a beast to implement. I'll tell you that. It took us about a year to get it in, and every member on the team had to dig in on this one because it was ripping off a very large band-aid to get everything converted from QuickBooks into this software, and everybody's got to be on board for it. But what it did is it was more proactive in the approach of not letting costs get out the door before the work was performed. Everything's tied to a subcontract and a purchase order. Purchase orders are with vendors, subcontract with subcontractors. So nothing can get paid unless the subcontractor accepts the subcontract, or the vendor accepts the purchase order. Everything's agreed to. So if they need a change order, they have to actually apply for a change order and get change orders. So it gave us much more control in the process, as opposed to people saying, well, I just had him do it. One of our superintendents say, well, I just had him do it. I'll pay him later. And then you have this floating cost out there that's a surprise at the end. We've eliminated all.
If you could go back and do that switch over to Jonas Premier software again, what would you if you could go back right before you did that implementation and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be if you had it to do over again?
Take a stiff drink. No, no, it was hard. I mean, I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was very difficult. But it was something that I knew we needed to do. As far as advice goes, just commit that it's going to get hard. It's going to get nasty. It's going to get it's going to take longer than you think it will. But just like anything worth having, it takes work and effort and energy. We're 2 years into it. I would say we're operating about 90 to 95% to its capacity for our roles. We still haven't maximized it. I don't know if we ever will completely maximize it, but that first year we were probably 70%. And so we've optimized over the year with our team. It's going to take longer, but you have to be dedicated to the process, and it's got to be a top down. That is where I think top down is very important. It's got to be embraced by the owner or the chief operations officer, whoever's going to be in charge of rolling that out. It's got to be embraced from the top down, because you're going to have interference. You're going to have problems. You got to increase your tolerance for some mistakes along the way, and know that at the end game is going to way pay off for the little mistakes you're going to have along the way. But you got to be patient and get through it and fix the system so the system can work for you. So patience is a big one.
You talked about the revenue maximizer. You mentioned that as being one of the impactful systems or processes. Talk about what the revenue maximizer is. Describe that in your words, and then how has that been most impactful for you?
Yeah, so the revenue maximizer was a game changer for us. It was a piece of software you built that you gave out to your clients, which was a huge asset for, I think just that one tool alone was worth any subscription I ever paid to you, or any money invested in our relationship. I mean, that was huge. I think what it is, if you can imagine kind of like an Excel spreadsheet or some templates kind of like that. And basically you have a job list where you enter all your jobs, you enter the contract value. We modified the report just a little bit for our purposes. So I added a gross profit, projected profit margin column, and tweaked some measurables that we measure our business by. And basically it's a running list of every project that you have in the remaining contract value. And then it's a projection month by month by month, all the way out to the end of the year for the next 12 months. And sometimes we don't fill it out all the way 9-12 months because our runway isn't that long. Maybe we only have 6 months, 9 months of projects, but they will fill in. So what happens is you enter what your projections are for that month. And you also have, let me back up a minute, you also have another sheet that feeds into this, which is your overhead expenses. And that includes all your office rent, all overhead expenses for salaries, all office supplies, all subscriptions, all your insurance, everything that you're going to have from an overhead standpoint that's going to hit your bottom line feeds into this as well. So basically, it projects what your minimum threshold to break even is. And so you see that every month projected out. Then you add in the contract value and the projection based on the month of billing that you're going to bill out or you're going to draw on if you're a home builder. And you can see month by month if you're going to fall short or if you're going to fall ahead. You can also do it with your profitability. So what it does, in short, is it gives you the roadmap of A, what you have, what the map is, and B, where you're going to end up if you execute properly. It also tells you in retrospect when you go back and look and you can identify we didn't execute here like I thought we would. We didn't make the gross profit that I thought we would this month. Even though we hit the revenue number, the profit was short, and you can go back and do a little autopsy on that month and figure out maybe why you missed the mark. So it's just a great, I would say, forecasting tool and projection tool more than a reactive tool, but it can be used both ways.
Mm-hmm. And you've done a great job with the revenue maximizer for at least a few reasons. One, you embraced it fully, started using it, started running your business with it. And then second, you delegated the revenue maximizer to Stephen on your team. Mm-hmm. What has it done for you to be able to delegate that tool and the use of it to Stephen on your team?
Yeah, I think that it's been massive because Stephen is our director of operations. So he's in control of what we bill, what we produce. He's the ultimate backstop for all of it. And that doesn't mean he's out there performing every job, but he has 4 superintendents in the field that execute on his behalf and per his direction. So what it does is it allows him to project month by month the targets to make sure we're within our goals. We set 5-year goals, 3-year goals, and annual goals. Then we break the annual goals down by quarterly goals. So for example, I can keep an eye on the quarterly goal and keep Stephen abreast of where we need to be and say, hey, in order for us to hit, we did this last month, in order for us to hit our Q1 goal, in March, we need to bill out, just for example, $1,400,000, to stay on track. And so I'm looking at the longer term vision, and he can break his projects down to say, hey, we need to bill out X by the end of the month. Not just bill it out, but complete it, execute it at a high level. So I'm kind of dumbing that piece of it down. But it really presents a roadmap for him, and he has control of that, and he has accountability to me for that. And then his teammates that are working in the field, our teammates that are working in the field, they know what winning looks like because they know exactly what is required for that month of work. And Stephen will even break it down and send out a message in co-construct after he gets a revenue maximizer and the projections done for that month, and he'll break it down, an execution plan. These items on your schedule of values, this is the percentage or this is the quantity we need done. These are the 15 items of where we need to be at the end of the month, and they've got 30 days to get it done and pull it off. It just really gets real clear on what the expectations are.
It's a different way of thinking about running a construction business. It's the embodiment of right to left thinking. A lot of people take more of a wait and see approach or a rear view mirror approach. Like, well, let's get the month done, and then we'll finish up January, and then maybe by March 1st, we'll see how we did, and we'll look in the rearview mirror. And the problem with that is it's too late to do anything about it. That's the wait and see approach. And what I like about the revenue maximizer is, and I use this approach to grow a business pretty significantly, is you get in the driver's seat of your business and you operate from right to left. You think, well, what do I want? What annual revenue target do I want to hit? And then what monthly revenue target do I want to hit as a company? And then what would it take to make that happen? So this approach has been very successful. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I'm sitting in the back seat of my business, taking a wait and see approach, seeing my financials 4 to 6 weeks after the month is over with. There's a better way. And it's the revenue maximizer. So I want to, you mentioned the nail the handoff exercise and going through that process and dialing in your pre-construction process. And I want to talk about, there's a term that you use called selling the gap. Can you talk about, can you explain what selling the gap is and how that relates to your pre-construction process?
Yes. Are you wanting it specifically in regards to the nail the handoff process or just more the pre-construction process or both?
Whatever selling the gap means to you.
Okay. I think so. Sell the gap. This is something that popped in my head at one of our live meetups that we had. And I was sitting there, and even though I'm on the land development phase, a lot of your clients are home builders and remodelers, and they were talking about, and I've lived in that world too. I've been all of those things as well, so I can relate. But it was from a customer standpoint as far as the frustration in the pre-construction process of, now we sign a contract and a homeowner or a client is ready. They're like, hey, we signed a contract. When are we going to see things go vertical? When are we going to see studs up? When are we going to, see windows delivered? And it's like, we've got a month or 2 months or 6 weeks of preliminary work before you're going to see anything. And so there's this kind of deflating experience. They're inflated because they're going to start moving. Maybe they write a deposit check. Maybe you sign the contract and they get funding, whatever the case may be, but things start moving and then they come to a screeching halt. What the nail the handoff process helped us with was actually identifying all the handoff points and identifying where the gaps were going to occur. So we could say, okay, nailing the handoff process, we're going to have these 15 items that have to happen before we actually execute a contract. And then the handoff point is we sign a contract, then it goes over to pre-construction. Well, in pre-construction, that's kind of this purgatory of the contract process, because you're in, but you're waiting to get going. And so I think the homeowners or the clients a lot of times feel like they're just kind of waiting in purgatory to see what's going to happen. So I think that in that gap for us as pre-construction, there's a lot of things that can be happening, and that in communication that the homeowners don't have to just sit there twiddling their thumbs, hoping and waiting that they're going to see something and getting complacent with the process. I think the important thing is when you go in, where the sell part of sell the gap comes in is in that sales process. I think you can take advantage of that gap and say, look, here's how we're going to do things. We like to start right so we can finish right. And if we start right and execute through that process, there's going to be a gap. There's going to be a gap from the time we sign contract to the time we get all your selections finalized, to the time we get all our purchase orders entered, all our subcontracts ordered or entered, materials, allocated, procurement of all those things. There's going to be this gap. Define it for whatever your process and your system is. It may be a month, it may be 2 months. I don't know what your system looks like, but you'll identify that in the nail the handoff process and go in and say, this is why we do this. We're going to intentionally have a gap, and it's on purpose. It's to give you a better product at the end and to make this process run seamlessly. So when we do go vertical, we're not stopping and starting and you're having tons of questions and mistakes, because we're going to finish right. So take the opportunity at the beginning to use it to your advantage to say, nobody else in the market that I know of in our market does it this way. And we do it this way on purpose. So actually spin it to a positive, spin it to something that you do as protection for the client and the process. That's what I'd say selling the gap is.
Hey, it's Todd here, and we have a couple of free resources that we want to get in your hands. First is our free training video, Get Out of Your Construction Business, How to Make It Run Without You This Year. Here's what you're going to get when you sign up for this free training video. You'll learn about the JETS thinking trap, which stands for just enough to start. that's probably keeping you stuck working in your business, and it keeps you stuck in firefighting mode, and it affects probably 90% of construction businesses. You'll also learn about the first few crucial steps you want to take if you want to spend more time working on your business instead of being stuck working in it. And you'll learn what nailing the handoff looks like and how it will help you eliminate 80% of your preventable schedule delays and profit bleeds. You can get your hands on that free video over at constructionleadingedge.com/get out. Constructionleadingedge.com/GETOUT. And the second thing is a question. Here's a question. Is your business structured for success, or is it designed for failure? We found a study and found that there are 5 root causes of contractor failure, 5 primary reasons that successful contractors self-destruct. All right. This is information that we feel like every construction business owner should know about. You should know about it for 2 reasons. If you're a general contractor, 1, you need to find out if your business is structured for success. And if you're a general contractor and you have subcontractors, you may want to ask this question: are your subs structured for success or structured for failure? And if you would like to evaluate your business to see if it's designed for success, the next step is to apply for a business evaluation call with my team. We'll go through these 5 root causes of failure, evaluate your business, and then give you some pointers. Highlight the red flags, the early indicators that you may want to focus your energy on. And if it makes sense, we can talk through the details of our Systematize Your Construction Business program that will ensure it is structured for success. If you would like to schedule your free business evaluation, go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply, APPLY, or simply go to our website, constructionleadingedge.com, and tap the Apply Now button. Now, let's get back to the episode. All right, so you talked about the most impactful systems that you implemented. Let's talk about some things. Were there any things that you tried that didn't work? Anything come to mind that maybe it's the strategies we talked about that just didn't go anywhere, they didn't work, but was there anything that you tried that didn't work? Maybe there's somebody out there who's thinking about trying it and you could save them some effort. Anything come to mind there?
I think authoritarian type management out of intimidation. You will burn your people up. You'll burn them out. You'll frustrate them, and you'll have a culture of fear instead of progress. I would say from time to time, and I think we talked about this before on a previous episode when I think I coined the term "squeeze the puppy," And so basically, the analogy was that, I think in analogies, so forgive me, but, you picture this kid, this young child that has this puppy for the first time that they've wanted forever, and they finally get it, and they want to love it so much, they pick it up and they just squeeze it so tight. The puppy's like gasping for air because it's getting smothered. And, so they're wanting to love it well by squeezing it more. And in fact, they're actually hurting the puppy. They're hurting the dog. So I think a lot of times when leaders encounter resistance or they encounter trouble, some adverse situation, a lot of times I think their tendency, I know mine, was to just squeeze harder on that thing, just squeeze every ounce of profit, squeeze every ounce of productivity, just tighten the grip, and almost get to a point where you choke it out and you choke your people out because you're burning them up and your expectations are too high for them because you haven't set the systems up to support your vision or your expectation. So really what you've done is you've set your team up for failure, and then you're demanding them to produce without the tools. It's like, hey, go ride this bike. Well, I've never ridden one before. Well, you can figure it out, and you don't give them any training wheels. Like, you got to get them trained up, and you have to have the systems to support them until they can figure out how to do it and become, optimize their system.
Good advice. And that's a very natural response. When things aren't going well, it's very natural to just take more control and squeeze harder. And that's kind of a recipe for failure. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some results you've seen. You've put a lot of hard work in over the past few years, implemented a lot of great systems, stuck with it, shown a lot of persistence, which is very important to implementation. What's different about business now after all this great work you've done?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think that it's so much better. We we run a business, not a job. I think first off, we had the best year ever in our productivity, our revenue, our profit last year than we have. We can, and that trend continues. We keep getting better and better and better. I think our client confidence has surged. I think we definitely have established a reputation in our industry as a reliable, dependable contractor, trade partner with exceptional workmanship. And I think that when somebody hears Waterton Construction Group in our industry, they know who we are, and it's not for bad reasons, and it's for good reasons. So I think that's really, I think that kind of some intangibles there that I think in general have happened. On a personal level, I could say that even just the time, the quality of life we've gotten back, I've gotten back to spend with my family, travel a little bit more, to leave the business for a week or two and it not fall apart and everything's dependent on you. So which reduces your stress level. Things continue to move on without you. You're really not that important if you build it right. The goal, I think, is to make yourself not that important. At some level in the business starting out, you are that important, but learning how to let go and not squeeze so tightly and letting your team do what you've hired them to do, work with the skill sets that they have that they're better at than you are, and trust them and get out of the way. They want to do a good job. Let them.
Yeah, that sounds good, but it's really hard. What are some practical steps for people to take who are listening to this thinking, I am squeezing the puppy, I've got to let go, but man, I don't know how can I possibly let go when things aren't going well? What are some practical tips or advice for letting go?
I think one of the things, and we've discussed this before, is for me being a person of faith, not being in control. We have a responsibility to manage the business. I think that God's given us to manage. When we look at it as our business and something to possess, something to lord over and make it ours, I think sometimes there's a dichotomy there of becoming onerous and greedy with your agenda and also subjecting yourself to tremendous pressure, undue pressure, and expectations that you want to execute that really aren't aligned with the goal and the vision of the company. And I think we got to step back and say, okay, for me, it was a huge release. I think when I had that realization one day, realizing, okay, God, you've given us this business to manage. And it's not up to me to make it all work. There are things I'm responsible for, but instead of me trying to crank it out and squeeze harder, it was like, you've given me the tools to do this because you've equipped us with the abilities to do this, or we wouldn't be here. So I'm going to trust that this system is going to work, and I'm going to get out of the way. So I'm trusting you to bring us the clients we need. I'm trusting you to bring us the people we need on the team, all that stuff. And once I realized that it's not entirely up to me to make the business succeed or fail, it actually released a lot of pressure off my shoulders trying to make everything work. I was like, look, if this isn't going to work, there's going to be something else for us. This isn't the end of the story. I don't remember who quoted this, but I think it says that, I'll probably botch the quote here, but it says, there is no such thing as failure. There's just winning and learning. And that's so true. So even if our company had, by society's standards, failed, we just learned in that process because it's not the end of the game. It might be the end of the season for that, but you have to I had to get to a point where I could let go of the outcome and just do what I knew was required to make it successful and be a steward of what I've been given to manage. I think when I did that, the release of the stress and the strain and the agony of trying to force it or a square peg through a round hole, it just released a lot of pressure off myself.
Yeah. I've had a similar experience. There's an audiobook. It's called The Power of Letting Go or The Art of Letting Go. And I think I need to listen to that book on repeat because it's all about detaching from outcomes, letting go of outcomes. And that's a real struggle for me. But my experience has been very similar. When you let go, it takes a lot
I
of the
think I
pressure
think
off, and things work better when you detach from the outcomes. It works so much better.
absolutely. And I think too that goes back to what we previously talked about nailing the handoff and more so the accountability chart. Part of that evaluation process of letting go is, if you have the wrong people on the bus and you let go and they're not equipped to do what you need them to do, well, that is a recipe for disaster. So in this process, the things that I think you need to be asking yourself as you grow is, do we have the right people in the right seats on the bus? And then if not, say, okay, let's put everybody where they belong to effectively execute the plan. And then you have to ask the second question behind that is, are they capable of functioning in the seat that they need to be in? And if the answer is no, you have the wrong people. And that's not a slide on them. It just may not be the right fit. Let them free them to go find a better fit for themselves so you don't become frustrated. They don't work in an environment where they're never achieving satisfaction from you. It's just a recipe for disaster because you'll delegate things and you'll try to let go knowing they're not capable. And then you're going to get frustrated when you come back and it all fell at their feet. And who's to blame? Them? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You got to let go. But I think the mistake a lot of people make with letting go and with delegation is they have the wrong person on the bus, they have the wrong person in the wrong seat, and then they just let them go, let them flounder, and they fail. And then they say, you just can't find good people out there. Nobody cares as much as the owner does. And these kids these days and Snapchat and TikTok, blah, 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 whatever. But it's not really their fault. They just weren't led well. They didn't have the right systems in place. Yeah, that's a
I
really
will
good
say
point.
something to that though about the younger generation. We've hired some younger people, and they've been great. They've been great assets, and we've culled through some of them too. Um, and I don't mean that against them. I just, one of the things I think that's a real challenge of today. I mean, most of the people entering the workforce grew up with social media, grew up with the internet, grew up with email. Like this is not new to them. This is not something that came upon them. This has been their entire life. So, we can go down a rabbit hole of all those things that, technology has aided with and inhibited with. And one of the things it's inhibited with is personal connection. And so a lot of those people from that generation want to do things through text and email, which is great for documentation, but you also lose some of the um, personal touch with things and getting the tone that was intended and, some of those softer skills that you need to learn. And, I think in a culture today, one of the things that is challenging is I think a lot of the younger generation comes into the workplace with an expectation that they're going to have time to do social media on your nickel. And I have a real problem with that, and so there is sometimes a culture that you need to create within them that may be different from what they grew up with, but that's going to be training it into them and training out some of the things that you don't want.
Yeah, really good point. Good point. So let's talk about some more results. What are some measurable or quantifiable results that you've seen in your business since you've turned things around after putting all of these systems in place, to the extent that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think actual numbers do any good here. So I'll just kind of talk percentages, but it'll still have the same effect. And you're humble when you say, since I put these things in place. Really, what it means is since I hired you and implemented the things that you suggested we hire, or implemented the things that you suggested we implement. So I want to give you credit there because a lot of this is from your leadership to us. I always tell people, it's like, we were trying so hard. I mean, we were agonizingly trying, day in, day out, week after week, trying to make this stuff happen. And it felt like we were this close. I was like, why can't we break through? We just had this impenetrable force field around us that just was holding us back. And after we got the few things implemented that you helped us see, that last 5% kind of broke the ceiling open, and we just started growing kind of like a mushroom cloud. It's just been really neat to watch the effect. So wanted to give you credit there. But so when we started working together, I think it was in August or September of 2019, if I memory serves me right. I believe that's their timetable. And we were doing okay. We relative to the market, we were taking up a very small market share, but relative to starting a business, had a pretty good revenue, and we had a good foothold in the market. But we just weren't being effective for gross profit and profitability, net profit wise, and overhead management and systems and procedures. So since we started doing the things that you taught us to do, we have increased our revenue since that time in 2019 over 200%. We have increased our gross profit from six-figure consecutive losses to seven-figure profits. We've reduced profit bleeds and got control of our costs and increased our net profit. So I think that it's just a matter of getting a few things dialed in. You can dramatically turn things around. And that's the problem, is as a visionary, I knew we had a good vision. I knew this would work. I just knew the core of my being, we had a good idea here. I just really knew it. There's just a few things holding us back that we really had to break through on. And it took effort because they were things I haven't done before. It was uncomfortable. And, it's kind of like going to the gym for the first time to lift weights and you've never done a bench press and you feel kind of awkward. Is everybody looking at me? I mean, I've never done this before. Am I doing it right? That kind of mentality. Did I do it wrong? And sometimes you do it wrong, but you learn how to get it right, and the repetition becomes, a good practice.
And what I'll say is, I appreciate the nod to our tools and the stuff that I brought to the table, but that's what we provide, tools, right? And the tools are only as good as the people who implement them. And you've been a great implementer, and the people that we've worked with who have seen great results, they implement. And the vast majority of people we work with are like you guys were. They're just so close. Just needed a few simple adjustments. It's not like, I think a lot of people think, well, we have a lot of these things in place, and maybe we need to burn the whole thing down, or maybe there's no hope for us. But what we found is there's a few simple adjustments that make all the difference. And the story I like to tell is, back during World War II, there was a fighter plane called the P-38 Lightning, and it was this twin-engine fighter that was really unusual looking. And Charles Lindbergh showed up in the South Pacific. He was a civilian, but he wanted to fly these planes. And after a few missions, he came back to the commander and said, "Hey, I think with a few simple adjustments, we can increase your range." Because these fighters were right at the edge of their range in the war against Japan. And they made a few simple adjustments to like engine speed and air intake, just a few simple adjustments. No new equipment, no new training or anything. And they nearly doubled their range overnight. And that, according to historians, tipped the balance of power in the South Pacific. But it was all because of just a couple of simple adjustments from somebody from the outside. And that's what we've seen. So if you're feeling like you're stuck, you're banging up against that invisible force field, you probably just need to make a few simple adjustments. And that's the good news. So we talked about some of the measurable, quantifiable results, but not, I heard somebody say, not everything that matters can be measured, and not everything that can be measured matters. So what are some results that you've seen, maybe some ripple effects in your life that maybe can't be measured, or they're not quantifiable?
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, client confidence, we're getting a lot of repeat business from repeat clients. And, I think anytime you build their confidence, they want to give you more work. You want to become their easy button. And they're like, I mean, literally, we had a client tell us that. I think I texted you a couple, maybe 2 months ago, and just said, man, I love working with Waterton. Y'all are my easy button. And we in jest talk about that and laugh about that, but I actually had a client text us and say that, and I didn't plant that. That's just what he said. I was like, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool when you can become people's easy button, and they want to use you because they know what they're going to get. They know the process. They know we're on our game. If something goes wrong, they know we're going to be accountable for it. They know we're going to take care of our business. We're not going to leave them high and dry. We're going to own our mistakes if we make them, and we're an honorable and ethical company. That's how we run our business. So I think client confidence is a big one. I also think just decreased stress overall, kind of going back to that premise earlier. We were talking about being a steward of the business. And part of that is sometimes hiring and firing people that don't belong on bus, and hiring people to replace them to get that vision dialed in and get that team dialed in. So when you do that and you get the right team equipped with the right tools, and you can step away and you can have confidence that, hey, this is going to work. This is going to run without me, at least for a time. You can take a breath and go on a trip, go on a vacation, and check in maybe once or twice, and hey, everything good? Yep, just checking in. And they'll call you if they need you, but it's so much nicer than thinking, oh, I got to take my family on a trip to New York, and I'm going to block out 4 hours in the morning every morning to do this and check emails and respond to this client and that. And that's not downtime. That's not a way to live. And so time for travel, decrease stress. The other thing I would say too, on a personal level, is just time to work on your own personal growth. I think starting a business is so taxing on your time and your energy, your mental ability, your mental health. All of those things can take a hit, especially in the early days when you're just grinding. And a lot of things get neglected because you're all hands on deck to make this thing, take flight. And it's weekends, it's late nights, it's early mornings, it's doing above and beyond because you are everything in the beginning. And I think that it's allowed me some time to kind of go back, reassess just for the health of myself, the health of my family, the health of my marriage, the health of all those things, and take some time to really evaluate not just what I want in the business, but what do I want out of life? What does winning look like, for me as a person, for us as a family? And define those things so I can set vision and set a plan to accomplish those things too. Because you'll find the more success that you have, if you're like me, you need a purpose personally and you need a purpose work wise, because you can have a purpose for work, but if work is your life, at some point you'll wrap all your identity up into work and you'll get all of that. So when one bad thing happens at work, honestly, your life is falling apart because you don't have the relationships, you don't have the healthy relationships established because you didn't take the time to build them. You didn't take the time to nurture them like they needed. And when you hit that bump in the road, you got nobody to fall back on because you haven't given the nurturing that they need, or yourself. And it can be devastating. So I think that's an important thing, that getting time to work on yourself for yourself and for your family and the people around you is invaluable to me.
Yeah, that's good advice. So what, there are probably people listening and they're stuck in day-to-day firefighting. Everything runs through them. The thought of taking a week-long vacation without taking phone calls and emails is a dream, but it's just that. It's like impossible. What do people need to be prepared for when it actually works, right? When the business runs without them and they don't get all the phone calls, What was your experience like, and what do people need to be prepared for when this stuff actually works? Maybe there's some things that they could be surprised by, and they need to be prepared for.
Yeah, I think you told me a long time ago on one of our calls, you said, don't put happiness on the other side of achievement, because when you get to achievement, you'll realize happiness doesn't lie there, and um, I think that that's very, very true. You got to find happiness in the journey, to the point I've just said, about if you put all your value and your identity in your work, some of it's not bad, but if you put all of it there, when it goes bad, you're bad. When you have a bump in the road, you have a bump in the road. And it can't just be an isolated event. It's all encompassing. So I think that that's kind of I'm not answering your question directly, but I think it's important to distinguish that. But when you do start having success, you can have a little bit of this. Now, what do I do? This is great. I built this thing that runs without me. Now I don't really have any importance here because it's running so well. Do they need me? And you kind of go through this point in time where you're like, am I needed? And you want to be needed because you've always been needed. Heck, this business wouldn't be here without you if you weren't needed. And so you go from being all hands on deck to now what? And that can be a lonely, empty place, because you have to figure out what your purpose is, as a person, not just in a business sense. And I think that speaks to what we just talked about with personal development. And that's why I've started tackling some of that stuff more, is because the emptiness I felt when we started having achievement, because it was kind of all focused on one thing.
What are some of the things that you found that helped you find or clarify that purpose when the business started running without you and you didn't have to be in firefighting mode all the time?
I think the indicators, let me start with some symptoms, and maybe I can work my way into the root thing here. But, some symptoms were complacency. You know, I would just say letting bad habits creep back in that you'd maybe conquered before. And I don't mean that in a whole range scale. I don't want people to think, off the rails or anything, but just letting loose of all areas of your life to some degree, saying this is what relaxing is. And this is, I have to, if I'm off work, I can relax. When I'm on work, I'm wound up tight. And learning how to manage your anxiety and your peace and your tranquility while you work, so you don't have to be away from work and make a transition into rest. I think that's the main thing I've learned with this personal development, is starting to identify, okay, it's not either on or off. You're always on to some degree. But I think a lot of times when we have such a high stress environment, we want to turn it off. The problem is we look to other things potentially to turn it off for us that aren't within ourselves. And that can create bad habits. That can create tension. It can create a whole slew of other problems. It can hurt your health. I gained quite a bit of weight through that, bad eating habits and stress and things like that. So I'm working on taking that off now, just different personal things that let creep back in that I had conquered before. And, you just got to take control of it, because I really think that transition, that I think that's the thing I've learned is you don't transition from on work to off work. You do to a degree when you walk through the door. You got to turn it off to be present for the people around you, but you really got to be at peace at work and at home, because if you can't do that, you're going to need something else to transition you. And a lot of times those things are external to us, and they're not always good.
Good advice. It's really good advice. So implementing changes and turning a business around like you've done, it's tough. A lot of people don't have the stomach for it. They don't have the persistence for it. It just doesn't work for them. What would you say are one or two of the keys to implementing systems and making meaningful changes stick in your business? What are a couple of keys that you found are crucial to making meaningful changes stick?
I think first and foremost, the right people on the bus and the right seats. It goes back to the accountability chart. I mean, you can even do the nail and handoff process, but if you don't have the right people in the right seats, that's going to have lackluster results too. So I think you got to start with your vision of where you want to go and then break that down to a smaller piece of, okay, who do I want to do that with and how are we going to get there? And I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, but in the revenue maximizer, I keep going back to that because there's a preliminary step to actually getting to that. And it's a preliminary document questionnaire that you send out with it, asking some questions. I'm majorly paraphrasing here, but where do you want to be in 3 years? What's the revenue target? What would it take to get there? You know, um, who would you need on the team to manage those things? And then you kind of map it out, and there's a way that you can enter it in the graph, and it kind of spits out this demand for your vision. And then you get to see what that is. And then you plug it into the revenue maximizer and you get this analysis back. Like you can plug and play with that and see, okay, oh, man, in order to do what I think I said I want, I'm going to have to hire 4 new people. That's this much overhead. I'm going to have to increase my revenue by this much or increase my profit by that much. Can we withstand that? And if not, how many people do we need to add? Or in our case, we had 9 employees, 8 or 9, give or take, at the time, and we increased our revenue 200% by adding 3 people. But it gave us the vision to say, okay, does increasing the revenue and increasing the profitability like we did justify it? Absolutely. I don't know if that answers the question. Did I derail there?
No, that was good. It's start with the vision. Make sure you have the right people on the bus. And what you said about adding people, you added a net 3 people to the team, but you made a lot of changes, right? You got there were a lot of people on the bus who weren't in the right seat or weren't on the right bus, and you helped them off the bus, and you brought a lot of good people, high quality people onto the bus. Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say everybody that's not on the bus anymore wasn't a good person or didn't have ability. I think that's a misconception. I really, really think as a leader, as you grow a team, you really have to have the mindset that if you have to let somebody go, you wouldn't have hired them if you didn't think they were a right fit to begin with, right? Maybe you missed the mark. Maybe they missed the mark. Maybe they misrepresented something or overinflated their abilities. Maybe you were in such a desperate situation you turned a blind eye to some of the things that were staring you in the face because you were so desperate for somebody. I mean, there's a lot of ways that they get on the bus, and it's not always their fault. Sometimes it's ours in hiring, and I think that we got to be careful not to label people that used to be on the bus that are off the bus now as bad people because they're not. They just need to find their fit. They'll figure it out. And I just know that it wasn't the right fit here, and they'll find a place.
Yeah, and sometimes they were the right person at that time, but the company has outgrown them, and that's just the reality. If you want to grow your business, there are 2 fundamental approaches to growing your business. One is right to left thinking, like what we operate in, which is define the business, the vision for the business, and then design the business the way you want it to run, and then find people who can fit those roles. The other option is take the people you have and try to wrap your business around them and do the best you can with what you have. And that's where a lot of people are stuck. But I've seen it over and over again. There are people who they don't want to grow. The business has outgrown them. Maybe they've outgrown the business, and it's completely okay. That's what I like about that term. We're going to let you go like a butterfly out of a cage. We're going to set you free to go find the right thing, because if they're not the right fit, it's not in anybody's best interest for them to stay stuck there. So I think a big part of this is being willing to let go of control, but also be willing to let go of people who need to move on. And that's completely okay. It's not a failure to let somebody go. It's not a failure to give somebody a shot and they don't fit. It's not a failure. It's nothing.
And sometimes people will even outgrow your organization. Sometimes you're a temporary stop on their journey, and you need to be okay that not everybody that is going to come to work for you is going to work for you for 10 years or their whole career. I
Mhm.
mean, the reality of that is almost slim to none. So that doesn't mean shortchange them. That doesn't mean, always be scared they're going to leave. I'm not saying that, but put them in the role that they belong in. And if they, I don't want anybody to stay on our team long term if they've grown to a point where they no longer fit that seat and they need a bigger seat that I don't have to offer. I will help them find a bigger seat somewhere else. I mean, because they're worth it. They've helped us. I'm going to help them. They're probably going to help us find somebody for that seat better than I can because they know what that seat requires. Bring them into the interview process to fill their past role. And if you do that right, you can make it a healthy transition for all parties. Just don't hold them back. Don't inhibit somebody's growth because you're scared of losing them. Let them go. I mean, it'll benefit you.
Yeah, such good advice. Such good advice. All right, so let's talk about the CEO Alliance for a few minutes. You've been part of the Alpha Group of the CEO Alliance for coming up on a year now, and one of the founding members. So, how would you describe the CEO Alliance in your own words? And then, what has being a part of that group done for you, if anything? I mean, let's face it, some of these guys are, they're difficult. They're no, I'm just joking. Fantastic guys.
I don't know how
Um,
they made it on the bus. I'm teasing.
it's a good
I'm
question.
joking. I
Clearly,
include myself in that.
clearly, we need to qualify our members a little bit better. It's a little too loose based on some of the guys in your group who have gotten in. But how would you describe that group, and then what has it done for you to be part of that?
I think right off the bat, the thing that comes to me is just a personal community with people that speak the same language. Gosh, it's hard to find people that you can talk to, especially in your own market, that get what you do. And maybe they don't. Maybe they're a remodeler and I'm on land development, and maybe there is a slight disconnect between what we do, but we're all fighting the same battles. We're all trying to grow a team. We're all trying to, grow team members. We're trying to increase revenue and increase profits and do this stuff. And we're all hitting some of the same roadblocks. So it doesn't matter what medium you're talking about, there's a commonality in that community. And so when I get on the phone, with Alex or Andy or Jeff or Max or Cassie, or you, and we're running into something, it's like you got people that get it. And I always talk about how I have this term I call ownership island. It's the only place all owners live that they think they're the only one there on this deserted island. The problem is they just have blinders on to see every other business owner is there as well. But you also can't go talk to your neighbor about some of the things if they're not in a business ownership role because they don't have context to understand, we're talking about millions of dollars of revenue or millions of dollars of this or hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. And, sometimes if they've never had the opportunity to manage that, they just hear numbers and they assume, oh, they're just got to be killing it, and we're killing something. I don't know if we're killing the business or, we're killing the market. I don't know. But, so it's nice to talk to people that understand and that you can vent with, or you can have the confidence with somebody and say, this employee said this, it pissed me off. I'm frustrated. I know I need to calm down because I'm going to react and not respond to them, and I can do damage if I do right now. How would you respond? How would you react, with people that you trust and speaking the same language because we're all students of, construction leading edge and you, Todd, and the things that you and Leah and Manesh teach. And that is, all the steps of systematizing your construction business. So some of the common themes, I'll probably hear this podcast interview back and hear things like, what does winning look like? Right to left thinking, all these things, revenue maximizer, we're all singing the same music and we may just be singing different parts. So it's nice to pick up the phone and you talk about what winning looks like or this challenge with the revenue maximizer or right to left. And that's all you have to say is right to left and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. So there is a language, just like there's a language to money, there's a language to business, there's a language to our industries. And I think there's a language to leadership. I really do. And I think you have to learn that language of leadership.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect.
That's good stuff. And speaking of Ownership Island, I think I heard you say you're going to write a country song called Ownership Island at some point. Maybe?
Oh no,
Did I hear that wrong?
no, maybe a book one day, or
Oh.
a journal or something that will probably be in the dusty archives under a chair somewhere in a old library. But um, but I'll let you sing harmonies. How about that?
I can't harmonize at all. I'll have to work on that.
But
I'll
also I
play,
think just do it.
maybe I'll play guitar. I can be your accompaniment.
There you
Accompanist.
go.
Yeah, there we go.
Awesome. But I think too, just the accountability and competition. I think those go hand in hand because we're both driven, or not both. We're all driven people in that group, and we all are slightly competitive. Have egos. We all have that drive to want to. We don't want to be last. Nobody wants to be last in that group, and everybody's striving to keep up or catch up or surpass. And, I see I've taken something from every member in our group, even though some members would say, no, I don't have anything to offer, or, they may be lacking in belief, but I look at them and say, there's something I can take from that and I can implement from what they're doing. And, it's just great competition, camaraderie, and accountability. And then it also helps me keep my focus on my CEO roles and not getting sucked back into the weeds of working in the business instead of working on the business, because a lot of times they can hold me accountable and say, hey, do you really need to be doing that? Or is that somebody else's role? And it's like, yeah, you're right. I'm handling this from my old mindset. I've got to handle this from my new mindset. And there is a better way to do this as the leader.
Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff. If folks want to apply for a job, find out more about what you're
Sure.
up to, learn more about your company, where can they go, Michael?
I would say the best place to go is either LinkedIn and just search Waterton Construction Group, or our website, watertonconstruction.com. And you can apply for a job at either place. We currently have an opening for a superintendent, and we're always growing and looking for good people. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys. And, if I can be of help to anybody of your community and, they want to pick my brain, I'm more than happy to do that too. So I'm sure you'll get us in contact if that surfaces.
Yeah, and I really appreciate how generous you are with your time. You've spoken with a lot of people who've wanted to find out more about working with us. You've been on the podcast several times. You've guest coached in the SYCB program. So I really appreciate how generous you are. And folks, Michael's the real deal. So if you reach out to him, he will get back in touch with you. So thanks again, Michael. Congratulations on the success. You and your team have done a great job putting all this in place. You've stuck with the vision and really talking about the right seat on the bus. You firmly embrace your seat as the visionary of your company and done a great job of letting go of control in the right way, putting the right people in the right place, having the right systems in place to support them. And it's been fun to watch and fun to participate with. And I look forward to what the next few years holds and watching you and your team continue to succeed. So thanks so much for being on here, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. Good talking with you.
Hey guys, Todd here. Thanks for listening. Two things before you get out of here. A couple of resources I want to get in your hands. First is that free masterclass, Get Out of Your Construction Business, How to Make It Run Without You. Learn about the JETS trap that's keeping you stuck working in your business. Learn the first few crucial steps if you want to spend more time working on your business instead of working in it, and learn how to nail the handoff to make your phone stop ringing. You can get that free masterclass by going to constructionleadingedge.com/get out, GETOUT. The second thing is your business designed for success or is it designed for failure? We did a study and found that there are 5 root causes of contractor failure, 5 reasons that successful construction businesses self-destruct after studying hundreds of successful companies. This is information we feel like every construction business owner needs to look at. So if you would like to evaluate your business and learn, is your business designed for success or designed for failure, then the next step is to apply for a free business evaluation call with my team. We'll get on a call. We'll go through those 5 root causes of failure, share those with you. We'll evaluate your business, see where there might be some early leading indicators or some early signs that you want to jump on. And then if it makes sense, we'll talk through the details of our Systematize Your Construction Business program. So to schedule your free business evaluation call, head over to constructionleadingedge.com/apply, APPLY, or go to our website, constructionleadingedge.com, and tap the Apply Now button. Those links are probably going to be in the show notes, or if you're watching on YouTube, they'll be in the notes below this video. And as always, thanks for listening. If you get value out of this podcast, if you could share this with somebody, if you could leave a rating and or a review on the podcast player of your choice, that would mean a lot to me and help spread the word out there. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.